Hello everyone, hope you are enjoying the sessions and networking with your peers. And now it's time for the CFO panel discussion on the topic of digitally transforming finance, what's hype and what's reality. In recent years, the finance sector has progressed tremendously from paper-laden to tech-driven systems, benefiting everyone in the process. Digital trends have accelerated the financial services landscape. And a big goal for CFOs today is to create a future-ready roadmap that not only brings optimal returns on investments, but also synergizes people and technology in the right direction. In the CFO panel discussion, leading CFOs from the APAC region will join us to share insights on the concepts of digitally transforming the finance sector, the several challenges associated with momentous shifts, and how it benefits the industries, customers, and people on a global scale. The future of finance is here, but what exactly goes into building that is still a question for many. So let's explore everything that we can about digital finance. And with immense pleasure, I would now like to invite Niraj Jain, CFO Matahari, to lead the session. Niraj handles finance, information technology, logistics, procurement, risk management, internal audit, and investor relations. Before joining Matahari, he was Group CFO for Kanmo Group, an Indonesian omni-channel retailer. He has also worked with Yum Brands, ExxonMobil, TVS Motors in the past. He's the president-elect for the Rotary Club of Jakarta and also committee member for the Indonesian chapter of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. Before I pass the frame to Niraj, I would like to update our audience that we are running a contest on LinkedIn. So keep sharing your insights from different sessions on LinkedIn using the hashtag #ETPhoenixAPAC. I'll repeat, this is #ETPhoenixAPAC. And the person with the maximum meaningful insights will win Amazon vouchers. So now without any further ado, let me pass the frame to Niraj. Over to you, Niraj.
Thank you, Shashi. Hello everyone, my name is Niraj Jain and I am the moderator for the panel discussion today on digitally transforming finance, what's hype and what's reality. Are people still confused about what digital transformation is? Or perhaps its time has come as enterprise and public sector organizations around the world achieve real success with their digital transformation initiatives across all business processes and functions, including finance. To get a hand on the current mood around finance digital transformation, I spoke to a few friends and got their insights. The encouraging news, for the most part, opinions align with 4 core characteristics I believe are essential for defining digital finance transformation. Here is what I found. Many think that digital transformation is technology driven, while digital transformation is software empowered. Its most important characteristics is the fact that it is customer driven. Number 2, digital transformation is not simply about customer experience, but requires end-to-end transformation across the organization, including finance. The transformation part of the digital transformation story is more organizational and cultural challenge than technology change. And the last point that I found was digital transformation does not have an end state. Rather, it's a never-ending journey to establishing change itself as a core competency across the organization. It's difficult to propose an initiative that never ends, and even more of a challenge to budget for one. I'm sure my CFO friends here will agree to that. To match the evolving needs of a substantially challenging business environment and rising customer expectations, CFOs are left with no other choice but to adopt a holistic approach to financial management that relies on a well-orchestrated digital landscape. The pandemic has propelled leaders to continuously reconfigure and digitize these financial processes, the benefits of which are being hailed by a broad spectrum of industries globally. Let's speak to 2 experts who are with us today and get their view on digital transformation in finance function. Before we get into the panel discussion, Khairul and S, please help introduce yourselves and share your brief thoughts on digital transformation processes in finance. Khairul, maybe you want to go first?
Thank you. Thank you, Niraj, and thank you, everyone. My name is Khairul Rifaie. I am the Group CFO for CIMB Group. For those who are not familiar with CIMB Group, we are a financial institution, broadly speaking, a universal bank and operating in all key ASEAN markets. We are in all 10 ASEAN markets, but on top of that, we are also operating out of London, Hong Kong, and Shanghai. Within ASEAN, we are the fifth largest bank. Prior to this role, I was the CFO for the Islamic Bank for RHB, another local Malaysia bank, and I started off my career in London, mostly doing auditing at KPMG and also at Goldman Sachs as an equity analyst before coming back to Malaysia and starting my career again as an analyst at UBS before going into the corporate side on banking. I think my thoughts on digital transformation within finance, I agree with Niraj's view that he has explained, and I think it's very key for the finance function to start accelerating the digital transformation within finance. As our businesses, regardless of whichever sector that we are in, whether is it financial services or any other sector, move and accelerate, I think it is very key that the finance function drives that digital transformation, especially given the recent developments on the back of the pandemic, where there has been a structural change in terms of behaviors. I think is more crucial that the finance function embarks on this digital transformation.
Thanks, Khairul. Triple S, you want to go next?
Hi. Okay. Hi. My name is Siew Shan. I the aviation group CFO for AirAsia. So I think without doubt, most of you will have heard of AirAsia. We operate the largest ASEAN-based low-cost airline. So we operate mostly out from Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia, as well as Malaysia. Obviously, the aspiration is to then expand within the ASEAN countries, and we will then have ASEAN countries as our playground. If we were to look at it, AirAsia has always been one company that go head on first with technology. But admittedly, that our technology, when we invest, it has always been the front end first, the sales and front facing customers. But with the pandemic, and there's a realization of the requirements of information to be a tip-top condition, then there was a focus and a shift towards investing what we have on the back end. Obviously, being in the aviation industry, we are rather impacted by the pandemic, and therefore cash restriction will be one of the key. So our focus was to sweat the current assets that we already have and sweat the current systems that we already have to derive the best value. So maybe we can have that discussion.
Sure, got it. So we have got interesting panelists today, experience from banking sector and experience from aviation sector, and we all look forward to the discussion today. So let me kick off with my first question, and trust me, I'll not make it difficult for you guys today. So how do you define the process of digital finance transformation, and what do you think will this makeover entail? What do you think? How do they work to deliver the benefits? Khairul, Triple S.
Maybe Khairul, you go first.
Sure. I think that's a very good question, because in terms of the definition of how we want to define what's digital and what's not, I think the bedrock to that is basically looking at the outcome of adopting the digital transformation, right? So it should be ensuring that the finance function is able to do things, simply said, right, better, faster, deeper. And I think the biggest key component is that it meets the objective of the new role of the finance function, or the new role of the CFO, being a strong business partner and advisor. So only those technology which can be adopted to meet that outcome, I would say, falls within that transformation of digitizing the finance function. And this can be anything from robotics, machine learning, cloud, big data, and all of that, which enables the outcome, which is the CFO being able, or the finance function being able to be a true business partner to the organization.
Okay, so to add on to that, I think a lot of people, when we look at digital transformation for finance, we move from past data to future forecasting data, from transactional to more tactical decision making, from just financial data to merging the financial and non-financial data, which is very challenging because there is normally an ERP system that we are talking about does not merge the financial and non-financial data. So what is it that we use to do that? And the granularity of maybe your revenue streams for us, as well as the granularity and the drill down of our cost streams. So that became a key focus for us when we look at streamlining our fixed costs during the pandemic. And give you a very good examples. Often when we talk about cost being spent, is spent to a SIM vendor in different parts of your departments and different parts of your divisions. And we don't have that collective view sometimes in order to drive that type of savings. So that is one of those granularity that I was talking about.
Got it. So kind of how do finance to enable finance to partner with various functions in business and provide more prospective than retrospective view.
Correct.
Yeah. In the light of this transformation, it is imperative for us to understand the salient tools and technologies that are used to upgrade and transform financial products. What exactly goes into building the future of finance? What do you think are key areas to look for?
I think if you ask me, the investment in people, whether we have the right people with the right mindset to actually adopt the technology, we can have the best in class. And if we have people who refuse to even click the button, we are not going to get anywhere. So I think that education process, I'm a big advocate of things has to start from the root. The root is actually the education, and the education adoption and the mindset should rather need to change towards adopting this type of technological changes. And education from accountancy point of view probably need to change, or finance point of view need to change.
Yeah. Actually, I would agree. I mean, totally agree with that. I think people is the biggest part of the investment. I think the investing in the tools on what's readily available there is, simply said, is slightly more straightforward than investing in the people, because we have an array of products and an array of options that we can assess, right? Whether do we use analytics, do we use machine learning, or do we use cloud to consolidate our data so that it's faster, better, more insightful? I think all those tools are readily available and easy to assess between one to the other, which one is more beneficial to further our function. So I would definitely 100% agree with Triple S, is that the investment in people has to be at the forefront of any of the investments they are planning to make in terms of digitizing finance. Because, for example, right, if we invest in some tool that will go live within anything, right, 6 months, 18 months, or whatever it is, but the investment in people, and that timeline of 6 months or 18 months or whatever it is quite certain, right? But investment in people, that's where I think needs a bit more planning, a bit more thought, and a bit more clearer pathway, whether at the end of that 6 month timeline, whether we get the outcome that we want to achieve. Whereas an application, once it goes live, we know that it's running on stream already.
Okay, got it. So, so digital transform in finance is no longer limited to a technology upgrade. It has also become a core business strategy, kind of, as Triple S was highlighting earlier. So, however, we also understand that every transformation comes with its own set of challenges, which often become a deterrent to business growth if not addressed properly. So from your experience, what do you think are the biggest challenges that you have faced while digitally transforming the finance sector? And what would be your advice for CFOs who are working towards empowering the finance functions proactively?
Yeah, I think it's linked back to what Triple S mentioned earlier, and I'll expand on what Triple S mentioned earlier, and also add on another part. One is people, right? So the biggest challenge is to transform the people to be able to adopt the new way of how finance should be, and really, like what Triple S was saying, is really not just capability, but it's also mindset. And this is a wider issue where you go back to education, whether is it formal education, post university and everything else, or even the professional sort of education, your chartered accountancy and whatnot. So all of that, I think, needs to be addressed upfront. And number two is that the main challenge is to do both concurrently, i.e. transforming the people at the same time as transforming some of the specific areas that we are implementing a new digitized sort of way of working. So for example, if we are adopting machine learning in our analytics, how do we then concurrently transform our workforce to be able to apply that new application? I think that is one of the bigger challenge, people and doing it concurrently. So that's one bucket of the challenge. The second bucket of the challenge, I think, given the array of products or array of options that we have, how do we prioritize? How do you prioritize on which ones will give us the biggest uplift, the biggest and the fastest fundamentally changing sort of uplift? How do we prioritize that given the constraints that everyone has in terms of budget, right? And I think to address that second part, we really need to have a clear pathway of where we want to be after a certain period of time. So at the end of, let's say, a timeline, a period of 3 years or 5 years or whatever that journey of transformation is, we really need to be very clear on what is the outcome that we want to achieve, how our finance function would need to look like, let's say, in 3 years' time. Only with that end objective are we able to then prioritize appropriately. I've seen and I've heard from peers and things like that, because of such a big array of products and options that we have in the market at the moment, the prioritization becomes very challenging when we don't have that end goal in mind. And we start to execute our transformation in a very ad hoc way, given all the very strong proposition of every single new digital proposition. So I think the big part is to actually the big challenge is to prioritize. The second big challenge is to be able to prioritize which one will be giving us the biggest and quickest uplift.
Right.
Yeah, and also to marry it along with the other changes that are happening in the business.
Correct. So to call on Khairul, I always am reminded of this word. I borrow from Lord of the Rings, yeah? One ring to rule them all. So the question is, which system is it that actually rules them all? And this is where I will then tie into which system is it that can sweat the most at a particular point in time. Bearing in mind that a lot of systems has a lot of add-ons to it. They are not organic in that nature. They are actually add-ons. And that is what a lot of service providers are actually moving towards. So one of those things that we have to consider is what is that one system that rules most of it, which is what will give us the most uplift. But having said that, when we look at the people that time, we can have the one ring that rules them all. But if we have people who does not want to change, then it's going to be difficult. And often what I tell my people is, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I will give them the story of eating broccoli when you are 5 years old. Because the broccoli will be put on the table, your mom will tell you this is good for you. You will say, no, I don't want. I say, well, the broccoli is good for you. You don't need to like it, but you still need to eat it.
Eat it. Yeah, I can relate to it. A successful business strategy, when we look at it, and to touch on your point on people and technology marrying together, a successful business strategy is the one that makes the most of the smart technologies and people skills. How can technology and people together force the future of finance? What are a few thoughts that come to your mind?
I think, and this is where, similar to it's not just the finance function, but similar to the business functions as well, where in a lot of industries, the technology competency starts to merge with your typical traditional competency, or whether is it business or finance. I think we need to move towards becoming technology people rather than finance people, and that to me that applies to every function, whether it's a business function or whether it's a support function, and to do that, I think what's important, again, going back to the mindset, culture, and education, right? I think there needs to be that real change management on how people adopt technology in their day-to-day working lives. So it's really going through that transformation of that change in culture and mindset, so that technology becomes part of your expertise and not being seen as a different function altogether. We've seen a lot of successful firms in any sector where the technology function is actually merged into that particular function. It's not a separate, technology is not a separate department altogether. Technology actually sits within that division itself. And only through that, I think, where that challenge that you mentioned can be resolved, right? But for that to happen, that is actually a journey, right? And that entails a lot of, those things of, education, mindset, culture, all of that.
Ownership.
Yeah.
Ownership, yeah.
Khairul, when you spoke about it, it came to my mind that it was one of the incident wherein the guy came and said, your IT system. I was like, it's company's IT system and it's everybody's IT system. We need to all own it. So I fully relate to it.
Yeah, because I mean, exactly right. When you say that, is your IT system, then they look at the technology department, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Even though it's actually a finance system, it's still it's a technology's problem. Even though it's a finance system sometimes, right? And that's when that merge has to happen, right? Where technology now today, right? There's no such thing as technology is technology department's problem. It's actually the owner itself has to be the function itself, and that's when technology and the people can be merged properly.
Agree,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I guess a lot of times your finance needs to make the first change. Why? Because when somebody comes in with an investment assistant, the first thing we ask is, what's the ROI returns? How much is it going to cost? How long is it going to take? And how much? What are the benefits is it going to bring? So I think the question now is not so much what is the return, it's what is the impact if we don't invest in it, which is more opportunity cost rather than what investment it is going to bring. So from that perspective, I think there should be a shift. So maybe just to give you an example, between what type of laptops and infrastructure you want to put in, how much you want to invest into infrastructure, Wi-Fi upgrades, and etc. Maybe to us last time, you would say, oh, okay, there's not so many people in the office. It can do 10 gig or 12 gig or whatever gig. And you say, okay, that should be enough. But if you were to look back and with the world now change, maybe that investment in infrastructure is more useful and it allows better connectivity and connection and seamless discussion rather than 15 minutes spent asking the people, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh, okay, my Wi-Fi is not working very well, or somebody drops off the call. So I guess then it becomes an ineffective working environment. So I guess it is no longer an ROI. That's my view. It is more so what happens if you don't invest.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So you give some good examples now. Just to look through, could you also highlight, say, strategic role of few of the automation or say transformation projects, or say, for example, let's talk about robotic process automation, RPA in finance kind of. We know that it has been there, but now becoming more popular. why do finance function needs RPA, and how does it work to the benefit of the organization and the process? If you could share a few use cases with us.
Yeah, we've implemented a few, and to be very specific, in the area of banking, right? One, obviously this applies to any area. One is tax. There's a lot of manual, repetitive work in tax. So we've applied, robotics in terms of looking at the data and extracting and cleaning up the data for tax computation purposes. We've implemented that successfully, and the efficiency gain is significant, right? The number of redeployment of staff that that enable us to do that because of applying robotics was significant. And the other area, and this is specific to banking, is on the regulatory reporting, where we report to our regulators, our central banks. Again, similar to tax, there's a lot of data mining, and we adopted robotics on that. And similarly, for that area, we managed to gain efficiency through redeployment of the staff, which obviously wasn't required any longer.
Got it.
Okay, yeah. So I think robotics that normally is used for transactional items. For in our case, the driving force is number one, we are losing people. Obviously, a lot of people don't want to be in aviation industry. On top of that, there's a lot of foreigners that we have that actually goes back to they want to go back to their home country, so they do not want to work anymore. So with that, then comes the driving force of the robotics for us to take care of the transactional items because we have less people. Having said that, we look at it in a very positive light because there's lesser transaction during the pandemic time for us. Therefore, it is easier to go live on all these things and having less error and less fixes in that sense. So therefore, the driving of getting invoices in, reconciliation done, and all these things, it becomes easier because there's definitely going to be error. But if you have 1 million transactions, a 10% error is a lot. If you have 1,000 transactions, a 10% error is very few.
Yeah.
So from that, yeah.
No, I agree. Somebody had told me that never lose an opportunity to do something great when the business is low, because that's the time wherein you can trial and test. So exactly agree. Leveraging a pandemic.
Yeah, Niraj, I think just to add on to that in terms of that, because then it opens up this other topic, right? Because in terms of doing something timing of opportunity of when we do things during a crisis, apart from robotics, I think linking back to what we were discussing earlier, I think that analytics part is as key as gaining that efficiency as we go through this very challenging top-line growth environment. So it's very important in terms of the analytics from a strategic point of view. And obviously, robotics is not going to achieve that. And I think that's where in any finance transformation, especially during a crisis, deepening that analytics capability, whether through better consolidation of data, i.e. one source of data, which will help then provide that insight, or through machine learning, through that 20,000 transaction volumes per day or per month that goes through the system, and having that machine learning to be able to pick up some analytics and insight from that. I think that is as crucial as looking at how we can further operate in a more efficient manner through robotics, right?
Got it. Just in the interest of time, I see that we are almost touching we have 6 minutes left. So maybe my last question for you would be, how can CFOs prepare for digital finance in 2022 and beyond? What are the top trends that you are expecting?
Okay, so this is my take. My take is 2022 onwards. If you look at the pandemic and you look at the current trends, there's a sudden shift towards an ESG. There's a sudden focus towards ESG. And to be fair, when we look at ESG in this part of the world, we are actually not, we talk about it, the depth of us adopting it is probably the top 20%. We kind of know what we need to do, but we haven't really got there to deep dive the data. And I think it is my view that come the next 1 to 2 years, where there's a drive towards this, there will be a need for us to be able to consolidate the non-financial data behind this to merge with the implication to finance. So how and we are going to do that will be probably something we need to think about when we invest in the systems that will bring the things together. I think that will be one of those focus. And because of that focus, and because of the focus into the future towards the revenue line, the top line, it will be a bit more difficult to do business in the future. Probably a bit of BI tools investments will come up. I think that the service providers out there is probably cooking some systems for BI that would link and be a bit smarter about linking a lot of data that we have, both financials as well as non-financials. I haven't seen one that actually does it seamlessly yet, to be honest, unless I haven't seen all of it. So
it's an open tender invitation to all my friends who are there from the BI division here. Reach out to Triple S. Khairul, your
I
views?
think yes, I totally agree. I totally agree with Triple S. I think yes, ESG will be at the forefront in the next couple of years, and I guess one of the challenge there is how the finance function can facilitate that internally, right? And be one of the, like how finance is normally is, right? Key drivers of businesses and strategy of businesses, and helping support business make strategic decisions. But the question is now, how can the CFO and finance be the strategic driver of the sustainability initiatives within the group, right? And I think one aspect, because finance is obviously very much financially savvy. I think the biggest aspect here is not just in terms of the governance and the bedrock of sustainability, but also in terms of how, if you look at carbon pricing, internal carbon pricing, and things like that, finance, that's where CFOs and finance can provide some expertise, right, into how these can be generated or how this can be developed within the organization, because we have that full picture of the organization and how we can drive that. I think the second part, obviously, given the topic that we've been discussing today, the trends will definitely be accelerated in terms of the digital fund. I think that is something that we can't ignore. And I think for the next couple of years, given what has happened in the last couple of years due to the pandemic, this is definitely going to still be at the forefront.
Got it. Khairul, you remind me of a statement that I was speaking to one of the executives from CIMB Niaga, Indonesia, and he stated to me that CIMB is a technology company with a banking license. So kind of, you kind of summarize it exactly the same way. So yeah, I fully agree to it. I think those were some of the questions that I had, and it was really a pleasure to interact with both of you today and to get your insights on it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Given that digital transformation is more about, as Khairul and Triple S mentioned, is more about how people deal with change than just about the tools that we have or how we put it to use. The bar is clearly set. The companies that will survive and thrive in the digital era are the ones that will deal and can change better and faster. So here's to my friends for a successful 2022 and beyond, and hope we all digitally thrive and strive. Thank you, everyone.
What an amazing session. Thank you, Siew Shan, Khairul, and Niraj for such an engaging discussion. And I truly hope all the service providers are listening to this. CFOs need a system which can bring meaningful insights from all the financial data that lies in the organizations. This is open opportunity for you all. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Coming up next is a CHRO Maker panel on nurturing the talent of tomorrow, taking a dynamic approach to skilling. See you all there. Thank you.